Once again, the young Kurdish boy had been sent on a mission by his mother to buy fresh flatbread, warm Kurdish naan. Relatives had come for an unexpected visit, and it was important to host them well. This meant, among other things, making sure the bread at dinner was fresh. As the boy turned the corner, the neighborhood Nanawakhana, the bread bakery, came into view. A small crowd of others from the neighborhood was already gathered at the wide bakery window, in front of which was a table covered in a white cloth for the fresh naan. On one side of the table, there was a narrow piece of wood with dozens of notches in it, where several cash bills were folded up and placed in line. The boy took out the money his mother had given him for the bread and put it in the next available notch. Whoever's money was the next one in line on the piece of wood was the one whose turn it was to collect their bread. The small crowd of neighborhood residents patiently waited and watched as the three men inside the bakery carried out their work, sleeves rolled up and foreheads wrapped in Kurdish jamana scarves to keep the sweat out of their eyes. It was almost a kind of dance. One man rhythmically grabbed fresh dough and patted it into round cakes on a tray. The second man took one lump of dough at a time, quickly stretched it out onto a round cushion in his other hand, and with that cushion slapped the dough onto the inside wall of a large circular tandoor oven. The third man carefully watched the dough sticking to the sides of the oven. Then, with a set of tongs, he suddenly moved to grab each piece of naan when it had puffed and bubbled just right, deftly tossing it like a frisbee over onto the counter where the customers waited. Each customer, when it was their turn, would inspect each naan frisbee as it arrived, often moving it to the side and flipping it over to help it cool down. Then, when the number of pieces of bread they had paid for was completed, each person stacked and folded up their pile of flatbread, shoving it into a bag to carry home. Before long, it was the boy's turn. Ouch! He singed his fingers on one piece of bread that was still a little too hot. A little more carefully, he then proceeded to make his own pile of steaming hot bread and was soon trotting back home with a large bagful. This was one of his favorite errands. He loved the smell of fresh naan, and he couldn't wait to get home to start eating it. See, in Kurdish culture, bread is a central part of daily family life and hospitality. However, even more than this, in Kurdish culture, bread is a symbol of life itself, respected, and even something holy.
Welcome to Rushmall, the Kurdish Culture Podcast. Our goal in this podcast is to explore, understand, and share Kurdish culture for the benefit of Kurds and non-Kurds alike. In each episode, we focus on a different aspect of Kurdish culture and how it affects everyday life. Like every culture, Kurdish culture is diverse and always changing. Our hope is to explore both the historic traditions and modern variations, highlighting the opportunities and acknowledging the challenges. With deep respect and admiration, we invite others to join us as we continue to learn more. So, come on into the Rushmall, the black tent where countless generations of Kurds have lived. Let us serve you a hot cup of Kurdish chai, and we hope you enjoy the conversation.
All right, welcome to Rushmall, episode 3. I'm here with Mimosa Andy and Mimosa Sarhad. My name's Steven. We're so excited to be discussing bread with you today. I'm just curious, Sarhad, were you the boy from the story that we heard here at the intro who purchased the bread?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't based on a childhood memory of Sarhad's, but maybe, I don't know. Sarhad, when you were a boy, did your mom ever send you to buy bread?
Yeah, for sure. I can remember, many times I went for the bakeries and bought a different kind of nani tandoor, samoon, automatic samoon, things like that. And especially for the dinner time, because, we usually have light meals in Erbil and we prefer to have samoon or different kind of naan, especially samoon to eat with yogurt, tea, and things like that.
To clarify for our listeners, samoon is like a small sort of loaf of bread. It's shaped kind of like how would you describe its shape? Sort of like a diamond, a small sort of diamond-shaped loaf, and for one person, typically. And then that is one kind of common bread in Kurdish culture, sort of one genre of bread. And then the other would be naan or flat bread.
Yeah, that's right. But here, one more important thing. I think in English language, when you use bakery, you can use for those bakeries that they make naan or bread and the other kind of pastries. It's really important to make a distinction between different type of bakeries in Kurdistan. In Kurdish, we have different types of bread you may not find in other countries because we really care about having, different kind of breads. That's why we have different names for those bakeries that they make different kind of bread. So the title comes from the type of the bread. I know in Western culture, a bakery usually refers to a place that sells all kind of pastries and baked goods. We have, some bakeries like that in Kurdistan, especially from my place, Erbil. Many specialize only in bread and samoon. That's what Mamos Andrew talked about. Samoon and nani tandoor or nani farni are the most common types in Kurdistan. So each type of bread here in Erbil, let's say in Kurdistan, often has its own bakery name. For example, we say nanawa khana, as Maus Andrew mentioned in the story. We use for tandoor bread. It's a thin bread. And we have nani tiri. That's the most common and the most traditional one among the Kurds. And till nowadays, the Kurdish women still make it at home. It's just a kind of thin bread we usually eat with the heavier meals, especially with dolma, because it's one of the most delicious. And the other one is samoon khana. It's somewhere for making only samoon. And the other one is kulera khana. Kulera khana is a different type name for a different kind of bread. It's circled and it's kind of fluffy. We have a city here, it's famous for this kind of bread. It's koya, we say koya. And also we have naskanan. It's another type for another kind of bread here. And we have now saji. I know Maus Andrew knows that the people in Suli, they love nani saji.
It's one of my favorites.
Yeah, that's right. So we have, Stephen, we have different kind of breads here.
Okay, now I'm imagining the listeners of this podcast, if they've listened to episode 1 on respect and they've listened to episode 2 on hospitality, these are big ideas, big concepts. One of the questions they might be asking is, how did we get to bread in episode 3? And in considering that intro story and seeing it being such a central part of the life here for folks, help orient us maybe, Andrew and Sarhad, why are we talking about bread here?
That's a really important, that's a great question to ask. Why we are talking about bread in this episode? To understand why bread is kind of holy or so special in Kurdish culture, we must look back into history, and we have to go back into history, way back. And we know that the land of Kurdistan is known as one of the first place and oldest place where agriculture began. Thousands of years ago, people in this land learned how to grow wheat and live from the land. Why we are talking about wheat? Because, wheat is a source of making bread. So we have to go back for wheat and understand what does wheat mean in Kurdish culture. And by the way, we have one of the most famous villages. It's called Chermo, near Chamchamal, which is located in southern Kurdistan, and which dates back about 7,000 years ago. From this village, according to the sources, the land of Kurdistan is the beginning of cultivation and food production. For Kurdish people, it was not just a crop at that time. Throughout the history, as Andrew said, it was life itself. From one small grain, many new grains, grow. It's a kind of miracle. And you can see a single seed becomes a harvest. Because of this miracle of growth, wheat and then naan took, a spiritual aspect in our mindset in Kurdish culture.
Okay. Thank you, Mamos Sarhad.
Yeah, just to agree with what Mamos Sarhad said, I think there is an ancient history of bread here that is really interesting. I remember visiting an archaeological site near Erbil, a place called Kachrash. It's an ancient Assyrian site, and the archaeologist showed us the tandoor ovens, these large round ovens that they had discovered in this site from 2,700 years ago that were so similar. Right after that, the group with me, I was going to take them to the bazaar after that, to the Kayseri bazaar, and we were going to eat some kebab and eat naan that was cooked in similar tandoor ovens to what the ancient Assyrians were using here 2,700 years ago. So there is this ancient history all the way back to Chermo, the beginning of agriculture, even the tandoor ovens. And like Imam Sarhad was saying, bread has been central here to life, a symbol of life. And it's taken on this very unique place in Kurdish culture where it is viewed as something really special and in a way that maybe it's not in some other cultures where bread is viewed as a practical thing. Of course, it's practical, it's good, it's delicious. But here it's become something much more than that. And there's it's very interesting and I think helpful to understand.
Some of the language that I'm hearing you guys use is like this, almost like a language of sacredness, or I think you said almost like a religious, spiritual weight to bread itself. Can you guys just fill me in on what you're getting at there?
That's a good question, Mausa Stephen. In Kurdish culture, Kurds often describe bread as one of the God's greatest and clearest blessing. So this belief is deeply rooted in their emotions and daily behavior. And many of us grow up hearing that if bread is disrespected, blessing will leave the home.
What do you mean if you disrespect the bread?
Yeah, just throwing it away and mixing with the trash. The way that you are doing the process of disposal is really important because it shows us if you are faithful to God's gift or not. To understand why we take care a lot toward bread, we have to understand the reasons behind this sacredness. We have an expression in Kurdish culture. We say "payda kirdini naan," or let's say, if I'm right to translate in this way, earning bread. "Payda kirdini naan." It means bread is not something that appears easily. It takes hard working and it takes time. You can get a lot of suffering from producing bread. From the wheat. It was not easy to produce bread. It requires a lot of process like plowing the land, planting the seeds, and then waiting through the seasons, harvesting, grinding, kneading, and then baking. So today machines have made the process easier, but in the past, bread truly and extremely meant survival. So from that point of history, bread took a spiritual aspect for the Kurds, and the way that you are treating with the bread, especially from the leftovers, the old breads, is important and shows us if you are faithful to God's gift or not. So we have different ways to treat the leftovers, this kind of bread that we have, at home, and it's still not appropriate to eat. You have to be wise to treat wisely with the bread.
Yes, Sarhad, I notice oftentimes when I'm walking home from work, some of the neighbors will have tied bread in bags on their gates. And sometimes they'll see that in the morning or after dinner, different times of the day. But I'll just notice as I'm walking that on the gates of the homes, there are bags of bread. What's going on there? Because I think this is tied together with what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's right. In Kurdish culture, we never mixed bread with wastes, with the trash. In many homes, including my home or my own home, because I'm living with my parents, we never throw it away into trash. Even yesterday night, my mom told me, it was two pieces of bread. It was so small. And I told me, Sarhad, please, can you put in somewhere and then I won't collect it with the other portions of bread. And then we have different ways to treat with the bread. And some of the houses, as you said, Mausa Stephen, they collect it in a bag and hanging on the gate of the house. Sometimes we collect the old bread and then we can give to our relatives in the villages to feed their animals, their chickens. And in some neighborhood, as you said, like, your neighborhood that you are living, it's very, very common, especially in the, let's say, social neighborhoods. People walk through the street and calling out that they are collecting old bread. It's a kind of business.
Yeah, I've seen the man with the cart.
Yeah. So, they exchange your old bread with something else like salt or, some soap liquid like shampoo, things like that. And other people, they place old bread in a box outside their door so that anyone needs, especially those who are walking around the neighborhoods, just to take it. And then they can sell to the people in the villages that they need for their animals and chickens. And it's a kind of business. Even, the old bread leftovers are very important to us. We can feed, let's say, nature, animals. I mean, the most common way is to treat with the breads after they became a leftover or an old bread.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Andrew, anything that you'd add to what Mimosa Sarhad said so far?
People are still definitely hanging up their bread on their gates. And I know that restaurants as well here will never throw away their bread, but they'll collect it and it will go to farmers or those who are raising animals. One of those on our research call actually on this topic told us that when she was a girl, this was actually a way that she started her own small business. She would go around and collect old bread and then resell it, and was able to make a little bit of spending money that way. And so it's even something that traditionally some Kurdish kids have been able to tap into for starting their own small businesses. I remember also was hanging our bread on our gate one time in Suli, and someone was walking down the road and he told me, he said, what might be better is if you take that bread up to your roof and you tear it up and you spread it out for the birds. He said, that's a good way to use your old bread too. So like Mimosa Sarhad was saying, to not throw it out, to not mix it with the trash, but to find some other good use for it is really sort of good daily ethical behavior here in Kurdistan. It's a good way to show your respect for this symbol of life, this sort of gift of God.
Based on what Andrew noticed in Kurdistan, we have some daily behaviors toward naan. If you see it from a Kurd, don't be surprised. One of the well-known our daily behavior about naan, about bread, is kissing the bread.
You mentioned that. Sarhad, can you just fill us in on what's going on here?
For sure. And let's say if a piece of bread falls to the ground, a Kurd will usually pick it up and kiss it, and then let's say hit it on his forehead.
To his forehead?
Yeah, it's just like a touching.
And then what?
I mean, let's say, for example, they kiss the bread and then put it in his forehead, and then they will place it somewhere high, often where birds can eat it. And this act is a sign of respect for hard work beyond producing bread from the wheat. And also it's a way that you show your gratitude to God, because you just pick it up, something, God's blessing or God's gift from the floor, and you put it in somewhere higher. Because of this sacred value. I mean, some people, even they can swear by bread, I mean, to prove that they are telling the truth. For example, it's really natural to hear from the people that they are swearing with bread. So it's really holy and it's sacred. And when they use the word of bread in their oath, in their swearing, it means, I mean, that believe me and I'm honest and I'm telling you the truth. Once, Andrew told me about that. I think you might have, this experience in your neighborhood, just giving bread as a charity. Have you seen things like that?
Well, certainly, I mentioned the neighbors and the man with the cart coming by and shouting for the bread. It's so interesting to think of the physical act of elevating the bread that fell to the ground, because pigeons on my roof are actually quite annoying. So to think through how this all fits together with a sort of an act of elevation. And Sarhad, it doesn't sound like you're saying that the bread itself is being worshipped, but
No.
what is happening here is some kind of a show of respect for what the bread represents.
Yeah, I mean, it's not about worshiping bread. I mean, it's about worshiping God that He gave us bread. Because we believe that bread is a sign of God's blessing to us. It's much, much older than the religion that we have in Kurdistan. It's older than Islam, than Christianity. Let's say, as sometimes we say, before history. It's not about worshiping bread. It's just a way that we want to show our gratitude to God.
Yes, so fascinating. Andrew?
Yeah, it was very interesting to me to realize that bread can be treated in a very similar way as a holy book would be treated. So when a Kurdish person would pick up bread from the ground and kiss it, touch it to his forehead and put it somewhere up high, that's the same thing they would do with a holy book as well. To respect a holy book, to kiss it, touch it to their forehead and place it as the highest book on the shelf. Or to swear by bread is a parallel sort of thing to swearing by a holy book. It is reflecting this real sense of almost that bread is somehow kind of like the word of God, and somehow carries this life and this blessing and should be respected and honored in a very fascinating way, I think. And in our research conversations, we were asking people, is this something that's specific to one religion, or is this something much older in Kurdish culture that has existed alongside of the different religions that have been here? And the feedback that we got was, no, this is something that is much older, something that is a part of Kurdish culture that has been compatible with the different religions that are here. And yet it is something that is deeply rooted in Kurdish culture itself.
Yeah. And yet, as we're talking about this, there's something deeply spiritual about it that maybe transcends these different traditions that could be in view as we think about Kurdish history. I think one of the things that we also saw on the research call was the idea of bread as a spiritual offering. And as we're thinking about this, can you guys say more about that?
Yeah, that's really important. Let's say giving bread as a charity is still common, and it's related to our religious practice, or it's linked with our spirituality. Especially you may see in the social neighborhoods, people may share bread with neighbors as an act of kindness or kind of goodness.
Yeah.
For example, sometimes when someone wants to do a good deed, a good action for the soul of a deceased or for their beloved one that they are passed away, they give bread to others in the neighborhoods. In this way, they want to make fitting. They are predicting that God will give them a lot of khair. I don't know what does khair mean in English. Kind of, good pleasing account of their good deeds. So, this way they try to connect bread with with memory, and even the prayer. Even my grandfather still does the same thing. And for example, when something happened to him or to the family, and God saved them, protected them from, let's say, an incident. It could be a car accident. Then for the night, for the dinner, he'll send one of his grandson, just to buy, some bread and giving away to the neighbors.
Yeah, so it can be used as a kind of a thanksgiving offering, right? If God has answered prayer or has protected you, you can give away bread as a sign of thankfulness. It can be used for those who have passed away as a request for God to show them grace. And then we also had someone come to our house one time here in Erbil, back when we lived in one of these social neighborhoods, and they brought us bread and they told us, someone in our family is very sick, so we're giving you this bread so that you would pray for that.
That's right. And even we have a term here, I don't know if you heard, it's called bread and salt, or they call naan namak or naan khwe. In Kurdish culture, bread and salt is not just about sharing a meal. It's just, a metaphor or, a kind of way to say that. They talk about the meal, okay, that two people can have together is a kind of moral bond or an unwritten social covenant between two people.
Okay, I want to get to this social covenant, because one of the other things that I noticed coming out of your research call was that there is sometimes bread can be personified to represent a good person, but then there's also all of these sayings and phrases about bread that are actually, when we think about the symbolism that we've already been talking about, and we think about the way that it's working itself out relationally among people and what bread represents within the broader culture and within the broader network of relationships. I'd like to spend some time thinking about both of those things. So the way we think about bread in the context of relationships, and then also the way we think of bread in the context of what it means to be a good person.
Okay, yeah. So as I said, it affects in our relationship with others. And you can see the significance of having bread among our relations with others. And in social structure, we have a lot of expressions, idioms, and proverbs, including the word of naan, and it reflects, let's say, a kind of wisdom that is going to teach us about virtue, about morality, about faithfulness, things like that. One of the greatest one is nanuche. It's really common among the Kurds. When two people eat each other's bread and salt, when I said bread and salt, they mean a meal together.
Bread and salt?
Yeah. Why they use bread and salt? As you know, because salt, it represents preservation, and food, it represents, it's going to make you full and in its survival. When you bind both of them together, they mean something very, very serious, guys. It means betrayal, dishonesty, and deception are no longer acceptable between them. As I said, bread represents life itself, and the salt represents survival and permanence. And both of them together, they symbolize a shared existence and mutual respect. And you have to be faithful that you've eaten salt and bread in someone's house, and you have to keep the relation, and you have to be very faithful.
Okay.
So it sounds like a bond is formed whenever.
Yeah, it's a bond. So let's say breaking, this bond, it's just like breaking the naan. In Kurdish we say, if a naan is broken, how can you fix it? It's not going to be fixed. And so that's why when you eat someone's bread and salt, when you eat a meal at someone's house, you have to be very faithful. And if you don't do that, if you break this, and it's considered one of the worst moral failure in society, or it means this person betrays.
Yeah.
We have another expression, we say namak haram. Namak haram, it means, I don't know how to say that in English. It means he forgot or she forgot the salt that he has tasted in my house, and loyalty.
Yeah, Sarhad, I whenever you guys first came to me with the idea for this episode and this theme, I was remembering one of the phrases related to bread that I heard from a local friend who said a question that might be asked of someone who betrays another is, what happened to the bread between us? Or if there's been the relationship has grown cold and you're not spending time or a fellowship with one another, you might ask that question. And that really struck me because whenever you share the things that you've just shared, it really does provide a much bigger picture that when we talk about the bread that is between people, we're talking about the trust, the loyalty, the love and fellowship that they have for one another.
Yeah, that's right.
I think eating bread together is a symbol of peace between two people, for sure. And eating bread together can also be a method of reconciliation. In our first podcast, we talked about the rishpi, right? The white beards who could make peace. And I remember hearing how in a traditional Kurdish area, one of these village leaders, one of these white beards, if he wanted to bring peace between two enemies, he would invite both of them to his house for a meal and maybe not even tell them that he was inviting their enemies. And they would come to his house and they would sit down at this meal and they would understand what's going on. They would understand this white beard is now this respected leader. He's trying to make peace between us because now we're sitting down and eating food together. We can't fight in the same way like we've been fighting before because there's bread between us now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
So bread can be used in reconciliation as well because it's such a powerful symbol, a respected symbol of peace, peacemaking, fellowship. So to betray that when you've eaten bread together is a very, very serious thing, something that's viewed as very wicked and evil.
So when someone invites you over for a meal at their home, then in modern Kurdish culture, or forget the modern piece, if someone invites you over for a meal in Kurdistan, what is happening in that meal? I mean, given what you've just shared, what is being extended to the guest, even if they're a foreigner like me?
In Kurdish culture, if someone wants to offer you an invitation or when they want to invite you to have a meal at their home, it means that they accept you and they want to show you their love, their faithfulness. And it means we are going to make a bond between one another. And that time, it means, I'm accepting you as a close friend of mine, and we can make a social bond, a moral bond between one another. And we have to keep ourselves in, let's say, in bad situations. If you need me, I will be with you. You have to be with me. And it's just like, as I said, a bond between two people, that it could be between two families, not only two person. It means we in Kurdish, we say, we've eaten bread and salt of one another. And that's why we have to be very faithful to us. And even sometimes we say we have to, don't let other people to talk about you in a very bad way because, you are my brother and you are my beloved one. If a Kurdish friend invite you, accept it. And sometimes when you refuse, it's a kind of disrespectful. And it's really nicer to invite them back just to show that I'm accepting your love. I'm accepting the bond that you want, to create with me.
So you're saying you reciprocate by having the person over to your place for a meal to show that the bond is real. Yeah, that's such a fascinating way of viewing what's happening there.
And even, for example, when someone invites you, don't invite them back. It's a kind of rude and shameful. It's a sign that you don't want, that friendship.
In our call, we talked about a specific term that's used to talk about a good man related to bread. What was that term, Mama Sarhad?
It's called nander.
A bread giver? Is that how we translated it?
Yeah, a bread giver, or sometimes you say piawi nander, or a man bread giving. It's common. Literally means a bread giving man. It describes someone generous, honorable, and hospitable at the same time. A person who bread giving, it means giving dignity. So we have a kind of proverb. We say, ask for bread from someone whose father was a bread-giving man. It means seek help from someone who understands need and someone whose family knew hardship and helped others in difficult times, in difficulties. Such a person knows the value of bread, and therefore the value of generosity. And even when we talk about the marriage, we say, okay, let's say get a girl, marry with someone from a man bread giving family. It means you will be successful in your marriage because this girl, her father,
he was a bread giving man, so you should marry.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, there's connections with marriage and bread. We learned that's traditionally a very important distinction for a young woman. Something that made her someone that young men wanted to marry was whether or not she could make good bread. If she could make good bread and she could make like big, delicious naan, homemade naan, well, then the community would know that that's a good woman. She's going to make a good wife. And it wasn't just reputation. It meant that her family could actually request more gold for their daughter because she had a reputation for being someone who could make really good bread. So it's connected to being a good man. It's connected to being a good woman. A good woman is someone who can make really good bread. And a good man is viewed as someone who is generous with his bread and a giver of bread. So again, we see how bread here is not just bread. It's a symbol of, I think, practical, everyday morality and ethics, how to live well in community, peace with others. There's so many layers of meaning. Well, on top of all of that, one of the things that I love about Kurdistan is that when you go out to eat, the bread is free. You get piles and piles of as much fresh, hot flatbread as you want with your meal, and they will keep bringing it. And again, it would be shameful for them to charge you money for that bread. Yes, you can charge for meat, you can charge for other dishes, but you should not charge for the bread because that is life. Bread is life. So you should not be charging people for it at a restaurant. Contrast that to our Middle Eastern or, South Asian restaurants in America where one piece of naan will cost you, I don't know, $5, $6. Oh man. Yeah, it's shocking. It's terrible.
The first time when I took a Western meal, it was fried chicken. And before KFC and the other American brands came to Kurdistan, I took a Western meal from somewhere, and they only put just one samoon with the meal. And, I was shocked at that time with one of my friends. We think, look at that. They are not generous. Just a piece of bread. Just one samoon. It was unacceptable for us at that time because we believe that even when someone wants to go on diet, the only thing that they are missing is bread. It's difficult. That's why nowadays those who are on ketos, they are seeking for a bread alternative. They are making bread from almond or other things, just to having bread with their meals. It's a serious thing in Kurdish culture.
Yeah. I've been noticing this keto bread around the city. That's a new thing. Okay, so in thinking through everything we've been talking about, I'm trying to think of just some practical ways to integrate some of this information that I've got with the way that I'm interacting with my neighbors, the way that I'm serving guests in my own home. What are some things I should be keeping in mind here?
Well, I think one of the most basic things that we can do to host people well in Kurdish culture is to make sure that when we're hosting them for a meal, that the bread is fresh. Bread is fresh and hot whenever possible from the local bread bakery around the corner, which most neighborhoods here have bakeries close by. So that's one very practical tip, an easy way to show respect and to show literally and metaphorically warm hospitality, right? Make sure the bread is fresh and warm. And something also Mama Sarhad had mentioned is that naan, the flatbread, is typically used for bigger meals. Bigger meals, more serious meals, and the samoon, the smaller sort of diamond-shaped loaves, are often used for lighter meals, breakfast or lunch. What else would you add to the practical tips, Mama Sarhad?
I think you've mentioned all, Mamos Andrew. As you said, I mean, the bread should be fresh. I mean, it's going to be good. I mean, if you serve them the warm bread, but sometimes it doesn't applicable, but you have to serve them with fresh bread and also enough portion of bread on the table.
Yes. Quantity. That's really helpful.
Quantity
Make sure you have enough.
I think you have to know when you invite a Kurdish friend, a Kurdish family, you have to know in which kind of bread you serve them. For example, if you invite them with the heavier meals, you have to serve them with the thinner bread. It's a tiny bread, and it's called nani kiri or nani tandoor. But for the lighter meals, as you said, Mama Sandri, we have to serve them with in thicker breads like samoon or kulera.
Hey, in thinking about quantity, guys, I don't remember if in the hospitality episode we discussed this, but how important is it that we have enough food?
Extremely important. There should be no doubt in your guest's mind that there will be more than enough food. The guiding principles for providing bread and food and hospitality is sort of overflowing generosity.
Yeah.
And abundance. Anything, Mama Sarhad, as far as when your guest is actually sitting down at the sifra at the table, is there any specific thing we should know about handling the bread in that situation?
Yes, something really important. We don't put the bread in somewhere in the, let's say, in the place only. We have to handle the bread and giving them directly, just on their spot, that we can make them sure that they have enough bread. And when they are done with the bread, and you have to offer them more.
Okay. Sarhad, in America, we love bread knives. Do we use a bread knife with the bread we've been discussing this afternoon, morning, evening? Is it okay to use a knife to cut your bread?
No, we don't have bread knife. Mama Sandra, do you know if you have bread knife?
I think in Kurdistan, we just use our hands.
I mean, we just tear it by hand.
I was struck by one of the things Sarah had said earlier. You ate the bread, but you basically broke the table. And so it's an interesting idea of this tearing, or it seems like the word tearing and breaking are closely linked here, Sarhad, and so the breaking of the bread. Yeah, so you break the bread, you don't cut it with a knife or something like that.
Yeah, that's right.
I would say maybe one last practical skill that's important for us to learn in order to enjoy Kurdish food well is how to tear off the right size of flatbread to scoop your food with it. Kurds call this a paru, and it's a bite size. You get the right side, tear off just the right size of bread, scoop your rice or your chicken or your kebab with it, and put it in your mouth. And so that's an important skill for us to learn.
You made me hungry now, Mustafa.
I know, me too. This conversation is making all of us hungry. You want to be able to be a skillful, paru eater.
Okay, so no kebab burritos with the bread.
No, that's right. You don't put your food you don't make a big, you can make a sandwich. Some restaurants make a sort of sandwich like that. But in general, you tear off smaller pieces of the bread. You don't wrap up the whole kebab and make a burrito. That's right.
Yeah.
Good point.
We have so many everyday expressions in Kurdish culture related to bread. We can talk about them, a little. One of them says, "Nanem bechwea." It means my bread is unsalted. We use this one when someone feel betrayed by a person who once ate in their home. The relationship has been broken between two people. When someone says, my bread is unsalted, it means, the guy who betrayed me, he didn't taste my bread due to the lack of salt, within the bread. That's one of the expression. And we have the other one is benemak, as I said that, it means no salt. So we use to describe someone who eat bread in a house but later acts badly toward that family. And we have another thing, we say naan khori sifra dra. It means he is bread eater but table tear. He comes to my house and I eats, and then let's say they destroy and they break my table. We say Ali benanu awa. It means, he or she looks like without bread and water. He is always weak and doesn't get fat. How can we know someone is healthy, someone is good, someone has a good income, someone is having a good life? We say, okay, if he has naan. And the other thing I forgot to mention, in Kurdish culture, there is a well-known expression called wheat colored. Wheat colored, it used to describe a certain skin tone in Kurdish culture. It's, let's say, a skin tone. It's warm, golden, and natural, and it's considered one of the most beautiful and common skin tones among the Kurds. And that's why, some Kurdish poets have often compared the beauty of their beloved one to wheat or bread. Wheat or naan is not a food in Kurdish culture. It is related with many other aspects in Kurdish culture, and it's deeply rooted in our unconscious mind. But we can see this reflection on our behaviors or in our daily expressions, conversations, our attitude.
Andrew, any proverbs or sayings, phrases that you can think of that Mimosta Sarhad has not shared already?
Well, I find it interesting in Kurdish how bread can be used in the language instead of using the word food. You can just use the word bread. So someone can ask you, instead of have you had lunch, they can ask you, have you eaten bread? And so it occupies this symbolic place in the language just for, have you eaten anything? I can ask, have you eaten bread? And that communicates so much more than just bread. It communicates, well, have you had a meal? Can I host you? What do you need? How can I help you? Yeah, there's, like Mimosta Sarhad said, there's so many proverbs about bread. There's one, like the goat that is cursed is the one that eats the shepherd's bread. He eats the shepherd's bread. Well, then there's nothing else for the shepherd to eat other than the goat. So he's going to have to eat the goat. I like that one. Yeah, there's a lot. There's many of them. There was one that specifically we wanted to mention on this podcast, which was, Mimosta Sarhad, would you give us the Kurdish?
So it means the bread that matters is the bread in today's meal. So it's really important, and it's going to, let's say, dragging back people from the past and from the future. Don't, let's say, prideful because what you've done or what they've done to you in the past. Please try to be focused and don't be prideful, and the thing only matters when you have right now. It's one of the most common Kurdish proverb among the Kurds.
So today's bread is the bread that matters most. Wow. Well, fellas, this has been a fascinating conversation. I have enjoyed exploring this subject with you guys, and I just am really captured by this idea of the bread-giving man as the good man. And I think that's something we can all aspire to.
I know your father-in-law is bread-giving man. I know because I met him, several times, and I could see that.
Yeah, we keep talking about Tom in this podcast, and we're eventually going to have him on here as a guest. Yeah, well, may we all aspire to be the bread-giving man. Thank you, gentlemen, for this conversation. I think I'm going to go get some bread.
Yeah, Kimamasta.
Thanks for listening to Rushmall, the Kurdish Culture Podcast. If you found this episode helpful, we'd love it if you'd share it with others. Subscribe for even more content exploring Kurdish culture.